So usually I start off my video with a few dumb sarcastic jokes to set the tone of the video. But today I don't think I'm going to do that. Why, you might ask? Well, today we're learning how to create fictional planets. Now you might be asking, McDeutschman, isn't allowing a single mortal human being to create and destroy planets vesting a bit too much power into a single human being? Well, that's for you to find out. First, I'm going to clarify, making planets is a very complicated thing, so I'm going to be going over everything except for terrain editing, because terrain editing is by far the most complicated and important part of making a planet, and everything else can be pushed into one single video. So first off, to get to the Planet Studio, if you have the PC beta, which you can do, or maybe if you're watching this in the future when it's part of the stock game, even outside of the beta, you can get Planet Studio, and then you're there. Wow, amazing. Now, if you don't have the PC beta, you can still access Planet Studio. You'll have a bit less stuff in there, so some of this stuff I'm saying in the tutorial might not be right, but you'll be able to figure out either way. So what you do is you go to Settings, then you go to Controls, then you go to Other, then you'll see Developer Console, and you can set this to any key. I'm going to remove this. I'm going to put it as backquote, Add. And there's a way to do this on mobile. Somewhere in Settings is a way to access Planet Studio. I don't remember what it is, but you can figure it out. And then you hit the key you set to Developer Console. For me, it's backquote. And then you type in Planet Studio. One word with the P and the S capitalized. Hit Enter. And that will load you into Planet Studio. Now, you might not see Create Planet as an option. I don't remember what's in the old Planet Studio, but I don't think Create Planet was an option. But anyways, since probably a lot of you viewing this video once it comes out won't have this button, I'm going to click it in order to alienate a pretty large chunk of my audience. Now, once I've alienated all of you, and selecting Blank Planet, you want to give it a name, and hit Create. And then, boom, you have a planet, whatever, it's great. You can move around using W, A, S, and D. You can rotate your camera by right-clicking and holding and moving around your mouse. Left-clicking and holding doesn't do anything, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to edit most things. At least I don't think it does. Yeah, you can move up and down with Q and E. You can rotate the planet with the camera using R and rotate the planet without the camera. You can't see because this doesn't have any terrain, but the planet's rotating separately of the camera when you hold down F. You can hold down G to rotate. I don't even know what that does. It's weird. H rotates the planet the other way, and Y rotates the planet with the camera the other way. But J, I, K, and L rotate you directly around the planet. Now, if you hold down Shift and do any of those, it'll do it quickly. If you hold down nothing, it'll do it at a medium speed. If you hold down Control, it'll do it very precisely. You can also press Space, and that'll lock you to the surface of the planet. Alright, so that's the basic controls out of the way. If you're on mobile in the future or whatever, I don't know how you do anything there, so don't ask me, please. Alright, first off, planet properties. If you have an IQ below 20, then you might not understand this, in which case you should probably stop watching the video. Other than that, I don't think I have to explain any of this. This is obviously the radius. You can change this to something much smaller. I'm going to change it to something that's at half its radius, half. Now you'll notice right here on the right in this celestial body thing, whatever it's called, it says rebuild is required. Now that's what this is. This is essentially reloading the planet, because every single time you change the planet, it has to reload the planet to show you any of the changes. Just by moving your mouse over here to this button that looks like a reload button and pressing it. It'll load for a while. It might catch your computer on fire. I don't know. Next off, water. Oh, I don't know why it says water. This is atmosphere. So first off, what you want to do is say have atmosphere, and then it'll allow you to have an atmosphere. Of course, you have to rebuild the planet as usual. Now this thing, the atmosphere is generally quirky as all fucking hell. First off, you go to atmosphere physics. I'm going to focus on that first. So now what you want to do is try to get the atmosphere height down from 114.9 kilometers all the way down to 4 kilometers. Now the way you do that is first change the density and lower it quite a lot. If you lower the temperature, the higher the temperature, the higher the atmosphere. So if you lower the temperature, that lowers the atmosphere level quite a lot. Then you can increase the molecular weight. Now, obviously, I don't want the temperature to go too far down. If you approach Kelvin, there's no way it would even be an atmosphere. So you want to avoid that. So at some point, you're just going to have to up the mean molecular weight, and you can just expand this. I'm going to set this to 200. If you, this slider only goes up to 50, but you can click or tap on the number here and manually type in a value, and that allows you to get it all the way down to 3.2. That's a bit too low. I'm going to set this to 175. So now we got the atmosphere exactly where we want it. I'm going to set the crush value to 0 so it doesn't explode any crafts. The fade distance, what is that? Also, I'm going to set the fade distance to a much smaller number so that because otherwise the atmosphere will continue 5,000 kilometers more. So I'm going to set it to something like 200. Now, I don't know if you know this, but the Earth actually filters out light, so it's red. So if you actually see pictures of the Earth in space, what you'll notice is that this area by noon and dusk, it'll be red. So if you change the dusk color, you can set it to red, and that's actually a lot more realistic. Oopsie. This is actually a decent amount more realistic. Obviously, it looks weird because you don't actually have a planet. You just have a blank sphere because we haven't edited any of the terrain yet. This is kind of important, but if you edit the terrain, as you can see here, it says terrain. This will just edit how the atmosphere colors the terrain. It won't actually edit anything about the sky shader like this. So what you want to do is go to skip both, go to sky, and this will give you what you want. Now, the sun brightness is basically shows you how the planet will look depending on whether you're really close to the sun or really far away. So I'm going to set the sun brightness to something pretty low. I'm going to set the my scattering to something pretty low. Oh, my scattering, as you can see here, the my scattering sort of increases how much there's like fog or light at the end. It's really weird, but whatever. I like having it low. It looks weird to have it high. Real light scattering is basically the same thing as my scattering. Symmetry scattering is a bit different. As you'll notice, this affects the sun a lot more than it affects the horizon. I didn't know this existed, so I feel like an idiot now. But yeah, you can apparently adjust the scale of the height of the atmosphere. Again, that is not something I knew. I'm going to go back to terrain, and if you go to LERP depth scale, this essentially tells you how much you're going to see the effects of like my scattering and whatnot. So if you adjust the surface one, you're going to see a lot less of the effects on the surface, and if you raise it, you see a lot more. Then if you go into space and you raise the space one, this might seem pretty obvious, but you'll see more of the effects in space. So for Venus, for a thick atmosphere planet like Venus, you might want to increase the intensity from space, but on the surface, obviously you want to be able to see things without a huge white glow, so you might decrease the amount on the surface. But when you go to space, you'll see this. Anyways, that was wordy, and I probably messed up a million times, but next up is water. Now first off, you're going to want to say has water, and I'm going to increase the sea level to 500 maybe, and then of course rebuild everything. So as it turns out, 500 was not quite enough to breach the surface, so I'm going to try and set it to 700. So as you can see now we have water. Water with waves, water like it's an ocean. Also, when you're editing the ocean, make sure you have underwater visuals on. That's kind of important. Now, I'm not sure what's causing this. I think it's because the planet just doesn't have any terrain, and that's why. But when you look on the horizon, it has this weird, you see the sky shader. Or maybe it's just because we're in Planet Studio. But anyways, I feel like most of this is pretty self-explanatory, except for the water gradient. Basically what this is saying, I think, I'm not sure if I'm remembering this correctly, but if I remember this correctly, I think the closer it is to land, the more it's going to show you the thing on the left or the right. And the deeper the water is, the more it's going to show you the thing on the left or the right. I can't remember which one it is. And the closer the water is to the shore, and the shallower the water, the more it's going to show the thing on the right or the left. I don't remember. I'll go more over it when we do episodes where we're making like continents or whatever. So I'm going to save that. Now you can edit all of these, obviously. They're pretty self-explanatory. You got to rebuild them, obviously. You can up the wave speed, and you can edit the waves. But anyways, the underwater. Now, if you go underwater and you have underwater visuals enabled, you'll see this. This is essentially just trying to make it look all spooky and whatnot down here. And if you go deep enough, it becomes black, because that's what happens when you go under the ocean and you can't see any more light. And I swear to God, I don't know what's causing this horizon thing. I had this earlier when I was preparing for this tutorial. I have no idea what the deal with that is. I think it's just a bug with the Planet Studio, or it's because there's no terrain on the planet. So one or the other. But basically, what this does is you can edit this, so I can set it so when you're really deep underwater, it'll become bright red. So if I rebuild that, as you can see, it's already starting to become red, and if we go even deeper, it'll slowly become more and more red until it looks like your PC has bugged out. Everything else is pretty self-explanatory, or you just need terrain for me to really show you how it works. The next part is texturing everything, or adding textures to the planet surface. So for that, so you can actually be able to see stuff, I'm going to disable has water and just remove all the water. Alright, on to the terrain textures. Now, as you can see here, you can add or remove a texture. I don't think there is a texture on any of the terrain here. Now you can add in a texture from one of these. This is all of these are like from the stock game, I think. And you can select that. And this will add in a texture. It won't add it in anywhere. I'll show you how to actually add that onto the terrain. But think of this as like loading this terrain into the file of the planet. And then this here is actually applying that file to the planet's surface. So what you want to do is then add another texture. And I'm going to show you how to add in a custom texture. So what you want to do is hit this plus button or browse. And then you can add in anything. So for example, this is a cat. And now you can add in a cat texture. Boom, you have a cat now. Now, obviously, that's not on the surface. So even if you reload the planet or rebuild it, it won't change anything. So what you want to do is go here, and we only have one. Up here is where the biomes are. We only have one biome, which is named default right now, and that biome only has one sub-biome. That's because we're obviously not editing the planet yet, and the default planet comes with one biome with one sub-biome. Now, sub-biomes are essentially ways to color different sections of the biome different colors, or give it different textures, or give it different altitudes, different things like that. So anyways, I'm going to change this mountain texture to the cat texture, rebuild it. Now, obviously, it looks like not much has changed. Maybe the planet looks like it has a few more lines in it for some reason. That's because the atmosphere my scattering is messing with it. But if we get closer, you'll notice there's a bunch of weird things on the planet. And those things happen to be cats. You can change the color as well, so I can change it to like be reddish. Rebuild it. And that crashed my game. Alright, let me reload Simple Rockets 2. Alright, so my game crashed and the planet's gone because I didn't save it. But it isn't hard to make, so I'm going to try and completely remake it to get to where it is, or where it was. Alright, so I think this is basically where we are. We have a planet with the cats on its surface. Next up, after the textures, there's the terrain and the paint tool, both of which we're not going over because, no, I don't feel like it. But then we have the rings. So first off, you're going to click has rings, because otherwise it won't have rings, or what has rings. Then you can basically select texture. Again, you can add it in manually. That'll open up the folder for that. Or you can go to all textures and you can add in the ring from Eurodose. Now, of course, I've already made a few ringed planets, so I already have a few textures available. If you look here, you can see what the image you want it to look like. You can make this in basically any you can make this in basically any photo editor. It's really simple. Just have like a straight line image and then add in different lines to make it look like a ring. And then you add that in. Now, it's important to note the inner radius. That means from the center of the planet, not from the surface. So if you set this below 0, that means the ring will start below the surface. So I'm going to set that to 1.2 and set that to there. Rebuild the planet. And boom, we have rings. Obviously, these rings are really light. And also, you'll notice the surface is kind of glowing here. I forgot to go over this. But basically, what's happening here is I accidentally set the emissiveness up of the texture. And because of that, the ground is sort of glowing. So if I set that to 0, night looks completely normal again. Now, one of the last things I want to show you on planet editing, and definitely not the least, is adding in structures. Now, there's two things you can add. I don't think there's a way to add in custom structures. There's a launch site and a drone ship. So I'm going to select the launch site. And as you can see, it's right here. So obviously the launch site is perfectly flat on this perfectly flat planet, but when there's terrain, that leads to problems, because what if there's a mountain here on one of these parts and it just shoots through the runway, and then it's completely impossible to use. So the way you want to fix that, and for example, I'm just going to set the latitude and longitude to 0. Now the way to fix that is to go into terrain. I'm going to show you one thing in the terrain editor today, and that is a little radius thing. I don't remember what exactly it's called. Now what you want to do is click Biome Pass, this thing right here, hit this plus button, and type in like radius, or radio flatten. That's what you want, radio flatten. Add that in, and you want to make sure the latitude and the longitude are the same exact as where you placed this. So I set this thing to 0, 0. So if I set the latitude and longitude to 0, 0, it'll be the same place, and that's good. Then you want to set the inner radius and outer radius to about 3,000, so about 3,000 meters. And then 5,000. Elevation to about, I'm going to say 50 feet, or 50 meters. I'm going to rebuild it. There you go. This isn't super easy to see. Alright, this isn't super easy to see, so I'm actually going to raise up the elevation a little bit more. Rebuild it. So what you'll notice here is that the radio flatten, what that does is it creates a sort of dome-looking structure above the surface, and it creates like a little flat plane on top, and that flat plane is perfect for putting your launch site. So anyways, this is obviously a really dumb way to do it, so I'm going to lower the elevation again down to 50, and that should set it back to normal lookingness. But that's how you flatten out your terrain in order to put a launch site on a planet with terrain that isn't perfectly flat like this one. Now, if you want to be able to launch off this launch site, obviously there's no launch locations. What you want to do is hit Update Launch Locations, and this will add in a launch pad launch location and a runway launch location. And as you can see, it's perfectly square everywhere, and that's fine. Now, once you have that, you're basically all finished, and what I'm going to do is hit Save Planet. Another thing that's pretty important, I'm going to show you how to download planets so you can sort of reverse engineer anything you see on the website. So what you want to do is go to Download Crafts in the main menu, and then just navigate to celestial bodies. Scroll past all the crap planets and find something interesting, like this Rivers planet. I think that's a pretty cool idea. Kudos to the creator, it's really cool. And then what you can do is just hit download. And then you can load it into Planet Studio. Now if you want to make a system, you just gotta hit create system, obviously. Demo system. And then it'll automatically create a system with just the sun. Now what you want to do is hit a plus button to add a planet in. Select literally any planet. I'm going to go with my own planet, Crevasse. And this will put it in a very high orbit above the planet you have highlighted, or the sun in this case. So what you want to do, now the semi-major axis is essentially the height of the orbit. You're going to lower that down. And the semi-major axis itself is, now if you draw a line between apoapsis and periapsis, the semi-major axis is the line that's directly perpendicular to that line, and it has to go through the sun. So basically it is the midpoint of the orbit. Then eccentricity is basically how far the apoapsis and periapsis deviate from the semi-major axis. Then you can adjust true anomaly, and that adjusts where on the orbit the planet starts. Inclination obviously inclines the orbit. You can flip it around if you want the planet to orbit backwards for some reason, and you can flip it again if you want it to orbit forwards, but for some reason in a completely flipped over orbit. The rate of ascension basically rotates the entire orbit on its axis. Argument of periapsis, it's all pretty self-explanatory. You can just mess around quite a lot. Then if you want to add a moon of a planet, what you can do is just click or tap on the planet, the planet you want to add a moon to. Zoom into it, or you don't have to zoom into it, but that helps for sure. And then click this plus button now that you have the planet selected. This will bring you back to the celestial body list. You can just scroll down or whatever, add it in. And as you can see now, it's in orbit of the planet you have in the game. And that's how you make the system itself and place all the planets in the right place. Now if you want to be able to put this into the game, what you want to do is first you have to make sure you have some launch locations. In this case, I have launch locations on this planet here. Now remember, you add in launch locations. You add in launch locations in the Celestial Body Designer. Now, in order to make sure it's in the system, you want to make sure you hit this reset button. That'll make sure that all the launch locations are there. Then you just hit Save System, Demo System. Hit Save. You hit Overwrite. Then hit Exit. All right, and the final thing you want to do to get this into your game is hit New Game. Company name, Demo Company. Then the planetary system, you can set it to anything, actually. Then you want to scroll up to the system you saved, select it, hit select, and then hit OK. And this will make a new game inside of your system. As you can see, now we're in this Crevasse planet. And that is basically everything you need to know that isn't editing terrain in the planet editor. The terrain editor is going to take a few videos itself to explain, so have fun with that. Alright, I'm going to pass you off to editing me.
Wow, you finished this entire video? That's incredible. I haven't even done that. And I'm not even joking this time. I'm recording this video before I've even finished editing it. So that's a true accomplishment you got there. Anyways, I'm doing that because I'm trying to edit this entire video together in a single night, and I don't think I can give a proper energetic outro at 3 a.m. And I'm doing it all tonight because first off, the longer I sit on a video, the less likely I am to finish it at all. And also, I have finals coming up about a week after I hopefully get this video out. So maybe you see the predicament I'm in right now. Anyways, I would like to make sure you are aware that you are permitted to subscribe. I'm currently working on a cure for how really painful it is to stub your toe, so you know your subscription's going to a good cause. There should be 2 of my other videos on screen right now, and as always, remember to beware of Santa Claus. He's a fugitive of the law who has been countless times caught watching children while they sleep and trying to slip down their chimneys. If you see him, do not engage. He's known to be armed and dangerous. This has been McDoitchman, and goodbye.